The garage smelled of oil, hot metal, and old coffee that had been sitting on the counter since morning. For Daniel Reyes, it was a familiar scent, almost comforting. He had worked there for 7 years, long enough to recognize every sound a car made when something was wrong. He wasn't the best paid mechanic in the city, but he was known for one thing: he fixed cars honestly. No unnecessary charges, no shortcuts. Just work he could stand behind. Late that afternoon, when the sun was already dipping low and most customers were rushing home, an old blue sedan crawled into the garage. The engine coughed and rattled like it might give up at any second. Daniel watched as the driver slowly stepped out. She was very old, her back slightly bent, her hands shaking as she leaned on a worn wooden cane. Her clothes were clean but clearly old, and there was a quiet nervousness in the way she looked around. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice thin but polite. "Do you repair brakes here?" Daniel nodded and guided her inside. He took the car for a short test and immediately felt the problem. The brakes responded late, dangerously late. When he lifted the car and checked underneath, he saw a badly worn brake line. It was a simple fix, not expensive in parts, but critical. If it failed on the road, the consequences could be deadly. When he explained the issue and quoted the standard price, the woman's face tightened. She opened her purse and slowly counted a few wrinkled bills, stopping when she realized it wasn't enough. Her shoulders slumped. "I get my pension next week," she said quietly, almost apologetically. "I only need the car to go to the pharmacy and church." Daniel felt a knot form in his chest. He glanced toward the office window where his boss, Mr. Carter, was seated, staring at a computer screen filled with invoices and numbers. Carter believed every minute had to be billed, every bolt accounted for. Compassion didn't appear anywhere on his spreadsheets. Daniel looked back at the old woman's tired eyes and made his decision. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'll handle it." He replaced the brake line, checked the pads, and made sure everything was safe. He even added windshield fluid and cleaned the dust from the dashboard. When he handed her the keys, she tried to give him the little money she had, but he pushed her hand back. "No charge," he said. Her eyes filled with tears. She held his hand with surprising strength. "Young man," she whispered, "kindness like this never disappears. One day, it comes back." Daniel smiled politely, not expecting anything. For him, it was just the right thing to do. The next morning, the air inside the garage felt heavier than usual. Daniel Reyes arrived early, as he always did, setting his toolbox down beside his station and wiping his hands on a rag before he even began. He hadn't slept well. His mind kept returning to the old woman, to the way her hands had trembled and the relief in her eyes when he told her she could take the car. He told himself he'd done the right thing, yet a quiet tension sat in his chest, warning him that his boss might not see it that way. Mr. Carter arrived just after 8. His polished shoes clicking sharply against the concrete floor as he walked through the garage. He barely greeted anyone, his eyes already scanning the day's workload. Within minutes, he disappeared into his glass-walled office. Daniel tried to focus on the car in front of him, but he noticed Carter staring at the computer screen longer than usual, his jaw tightening. Then the office door swung open. "Daniel," Carter barked, "get in here, now." The other mechanics exchanged quick glances as Daniel wiped his hands and stepped inside. Carter spun the monitor toward him. On the screen was the invoice from the blue sedan, marked as completed, with no charge listed. "Care to explain this?" Carter demanded. Daniel took a breath. The customer couldn't afford it. Her brakes were failing. If she drove like that. "This is not a charity," Carter interrupted sharply. "You don't decide who pays and who doesn't. You cost this shop money." Daniel met his eyes. "I probably saved her life." Carter slammed his palm on the desk. "You don't get paid to be a hero. Pack your tools. You're done here." The words hit harder than Daniel expected. "Fired." Just like that. He tried to argue, but Carter had already turned back to his screen, the conversation over. Daniel walked out in silence, the sound of the garage suddenly distant, unreal. He packed his tools into his old metal box, feeling every stare on his back as he left. Outside, the sun felt too bright. He sat in his car for a long time before starting the engine. The days that followed were brutal in their quietness. Daniel sent out resumes, called other shops, and waited. No one seemed interested. Some had already heard he'd been fired for breaking company policy. Rent loomed closer. He cut back on food, skipped small comforts, and tried to stay hopeful, but doubt crept in late at night. Maybe kindness had been a mistake. Maybe in the real world, good intentions didn't pay bills. One afternoon, Daniel found himself walking past his old workplace, more out of habit than intention. That's when he noticed something strange. The parking lot was full, not with ordinary cars, but sleek black sedans and luxury SUVs. Men in dark suits stood outside, speaking quietly into earpieces. The atmosphere felt tense, important. Daniel slowed, curiosity pulling him closer. Through the open garage door, he saw Mr. Carter standing stiffly, smiling far too much. In the center of the space, seated comfortably in a chair, was an elderly woman. His heart skipped. It was her. The same face. The same calm eyes. But today she looked different. Her posture was upright, her clothes elegant, and there was an authority in the way everyone around her seemed to listen. A tall man beside her spoke clearly. Mrs. Whitmore owns Whitmore Automotive Distribution, supplying parts to over 300 service centers across the state. She is reviewing potential long-term partnerships. Daniel's stomach tightened. Mr. Carter nodded repeatedly, wiping sweat from his forehead. Mrs. Whitmore's gaze moved slowly around the garage. Then she asked, in a calm voice that carried through the room, "Where is the young mechanic who repaired my car?" Silence followed. Mr. Carter hesitated. He's no longer employed here. Her eyes sharpened. Why? He gave away services for free, Carter said defensively. That's not how we run a business. Mrs. Whitmore leaned slightly on her cane as she stood, her expression unreadable. The room seemed to hold its breath. Across the street, Daniel felt his pulse race. He didn't know why fate had brought him there at that exact moment, but he sensed that something important was unfolding. Something he never could have imagined when he tightened that brake line with greasy hands and a simple heart. Mrs. Whitmore took a slow step forward, the sound of her cane tapping against the concrete floor echoing through the garage. Her presence, once overlooked, now felt commanding. The men in suits fell silent, and even the usual clatter of tools seemed to stop. Mr. Carter straightened his back, trying to appear confident, but the nervous twitch in his jaw betrayed him. That young man, Mrs. Whitmore said calmly, treated me with respect when he believed I was simply an old woman with a broken car and an empty purse. She paused, letting her words sink in. He did not know who I was, nor did he try to impress me. He saw a human being in need. Mr. Carter forced a laugh. With all due respect, ma'am, kindness doesn't keep the lights on. We have rules for a reason. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes hardened. Rules without humanity destroy businesses faster than generosity ever could. She turned slightly toward her assistant. Please make a note. We will not be proceeding with any contracts here. The assistant nodded immediately, already typing on a tablet. Mr. Carter's face drained of color. Wait, please, he stammered. This must be some misunderstanding. We can discuss this. There is nothing to discuss, she replied. I choose partners who value integrity. You dismissed a man for having it. Outside, Daniel felt his knees weaken as he watched the group exit the garage. The doors opened wide, and for a moment, their eyes met. Mrs. Whitmore recognized him instantly. A gentle smile appeared on her face. Daniel, she called, her voice warm. He crossed the street slowly, still unsure if this was real. Mrs. Whitmore, I didn't know who you were, he said quickly, almost embarrassed. She raised her hand. That is exactly why your actions mattered. She looked him in the eyes. If you had known, it would have meant nothing. They spoke briefly. She asked about his work, his experience, his values. Daniel answered honestly, never exaggerating, never asking for anything. When she left, she handed him a simple business card. Come see me tomorrow, she said. The next day, Daniel found himself sitting in a quiet, sunlit office overlooking the city. Mrs. Whitmore explained that she had built her company from nothing, surviving hardship and learning early that character was rare and priceless. She needed people she could trust, people like him. Within weeks, everything changed. Mrs. Whitmore financed a small garage in a busy neighborhood and offered Daniel full ownership. Fair pricing, transparent work, and help for those truly in need were written into its foundation. The doors opened to steady business almost immediately, not because of advertising, but because people talked. On opening day, Mrs. Whitmore arrived quietly, standing near the back as Daniel welcomed his first customers. Before she left, she handed him a small metal plaque. Daniel hung it on the wall behind his workstation. It read, "Integrity is worth more than profit." Every time Daniel tightened a bolt or wiped his hands clean, he remembered the day kindness cost him a job, and gave him a future.